In this video, we will bring to your view the story of the Niger-Delta revolutionary icon Adaka Boro and his many exploits in Nigeria. We will discuss his 12-day war against the Federal Republic of Nigeria and his subsequent involvement in the Nigerian Civil War on the side of the federal government. Welcome to this edition on Hisple Media, your in-depth history channel. Remember to like this video and subscribe to Hisple Media. Thank you. The man known to history as Adaka Boro was born Isaac Jasper Adaka Boro at about 0 hours of midnight on September 10, 1938 to Ijaw parents in the oil-rich community of Oyo in present-day Bayelsa State, but then Rivers State. Ironically, crude oil in Nigeria was discovered in commercial quantity in this community on January 15, 1956. His father, Hisple Boro, was a school headmaster and was always transferred from one school to the other in different towns. In his autobiography entitled The 12-Day Revolution, Adaka Boro narrates how he was always moving with his parents from one town to the other as his father was being transferred to head different schools. As the son of a head teacher, Adaka Boro could not find it difficult to attain his first school leaving certificate. He passed the exams in flying colors. After obtaining his first school leaving certificate, Boro enrolled at Hisple College, Warri in Delta State, where he passed the West African School Certificate examination in 1957. He was the best graduating student for that year. After finishing his secondary education in Warri in Delta State, Boro worked briefly as a teacher before joining the Nigerian police force. In 1961, he received a scholarship from the Eastern Nigerian Regional Government to study chemistry at the University of Nigeria in Nsukka. He was a radical and politically inclined student. After 2 failed attempts, Isaac Adaka Boro was elected president of the Student Union government for the 1964-1965 academic year. This was his first significant job in a leadership capacity, and it made him very popular. Being a radical and courageous student, Adaka Boro dragged the federal government to court, challenging the outcome of the 1964 general election. He was seeking the nullification of the election. Adaka Boro watched with keen interest the political crisis in Nigeria at the time and began to take interest in the works of revolutionaries like Fidel Castro, Frank Fanon, and Ernesto Che Guevara. Boro left the University of Nigeria in Nsukka in 1965 and relocated to Lagos thereafter. He, however, did not give up the struggle for the emancipation of his people in the Niger-Delta. While in Lagos, he co-founded the WXYZ political movement with 2 other like-minded individuals, Samuel Owunaru and Nottingham Dick. The movement advocated greater control of the benefits of oil wealth for the Ijaw people. In the wake of the 1966 January coup, Boro condemned the coup and the assassination of Tafawa Balewa. He was a strong admirer of the Prime Minister. The emergence of Major General Johnson Thomas Aguiyi-Ironsi as head of state convinced him that revolution was the only way out for the Ijaw people and advocated for the rejection of the new regime. He questioned the constitutionality of such a violent change and unnecessary display of contempt for the Nigerian constitution, calling it a clear assault to the covenant of federalism that was agreed upon by the country's founding father. Notably, a few weeks after the military coup, Isaac Boro announced the secession of Niger-Delta from the rest of Nigeria. So, now you know, Ojukwu was not the first to declare secession from Nigeria. But then, how did it happen? Living in the eastern region, which also included the Niger-Delta, Isaac Boro witnessed firsthand what he saw as exploitation of his people. The oil money that was obtained from the Niger-Delta was enjoyed by the federal government of Nigeria with capital in Lagos and the Eastern Regional Government with capital in Enugu. Unfairly, nothing was given to the Niger-Delta people who were already exposed to various environmental hazards as a result of oil spillage. He argued that the inhabitants of the area deserve a more equitable share of the profit from the oil resources, but that was not the case. On February 23, 1966, at the age of just 27, Isaac Adaka Boro announced the independence of the Niger-Delta region from the rest of the country. This happened about 5 weeks after the January 1966 military coup. He called the new country the Niger-Delta Republic. However, the new country would only survive for 12 days. During this period, he had established the Niger-Delta Volunteer Force, a rebel force trained in a militia camp within his father's home in Kayama, present-day Bayelsa State. Members of the group consisted mainly of his fellow Ijaw ethnic group. He encouraged his followers to demonstrate to the world what and how they felt about oppression. The militia group went on to attack a police station in Yenagoa, raided the armory and kidnapped some officers, including the police officer in command of the station. Unfortunately, they did not stop there. They also blew up oil pipelines, engaged the police in gunfire, and went on to gallantly battle the federal forces for 12 days, but were finally defeated by the far superior federal firepower. After their defeat, Boro and his compatriots were arrested, put on trial on 9th-count charge of treason in Port Harcourt Assize before Justice Phil Ebose, and condemned to death by the Aguiyi-Ironsi regime. However, on the brink of the Nigerian Civil War in May 1967, General Yakubu Gowon granted them amnesty following the counter-coup in July of the previous year. As a condition for their release, they were enrolled in the Nigerian army, and Boro was commissioned as a major. Boro organized some men for the purpose of the Biafran War. He gave his men a brief training at Escravos before sending them to fight. In his book, My Command, General Olusegun Obasanjo described the training of Boro's 1,000 Rivers soldiers as hurried and poorly done, with little or nothing in the way of training facilities and resources. Despite their inadequate training, he recognized, however, their services to the army. But Obasanjo, in the same book, stated that they were attached to the 3rd Marine Commando Division, then called the 3rd Marine, under the command of Colonel Benjamin Adekunle. Here, referring to Eket, Obasanjo continued, Isaac Adaka Boro and his Rivers men of Sea School boys had become a significant factor in the operations of the division. Their knowledge of the riverine areas, their understanding of the local languages, their ability to live off the land, and their swift, though tactically less accomplished movements accounted for their huge success in areas around Opobo, Andoni, Obodo, Opolom, Oranga, Bogoma, and others. Despite the fact that Colonel Adekunle received all the credit for the successes of the 3rd Marine, their contributions, though not tactical, was implicitly helpful in the capturing of many areas from the Biafran forces. It became very suspicious when Major Isaac Adaka Boro died under controversial and unclear circumstances on May 16, 1968, at the young age of just 30, with just 3 children. It happened after a successful battle against Biafran forces at Ogu, near Okrika, in Rivers State, that Boro was ambushed by what many of his men believed was a unit sent by Colonel Benjamin Adekunle. In the brief and fierce battle that ensued, he was gunned down. Till this day, there is no conclusive evidence on who killed Adaka Boro. But something extraordinary happened after his death. The troops' morale suffered as a result of the suspicion surrounding his murder, and the fortunes of the 3rd Marine Commando, for which Adekunle claimed all the initial credit, began to dwindle. His soldiers, who felt he was murdered by an insider, were disorderly and refused to obey Adekunle's orders. According to Obasanjo, quote, the morale of at least 3rd Marine Commando Division soldiers was at its lowest ebb. Desertion and absence from duty without leave was rife in the division. The despondence and general lack of will to fight among the soldiers was glaringly manifest in the large number of cases of self-inflicted injuries throughout the formation. It was here in Okrika that Major Isaac Adaka Boro was killed, apparently by a fleeing rebel soldier whom he encountered during a private visit. His death led almost immediately to the dissolution of the 19th Brigade, which became uncontrollable without him. End of quote. In an interview with the Vanguard, Timipre Owunaru, the only surviving member of Isaac Adaka Boro's guerrilla army, narrates that the cause for which they had fought in the first place is still yet to be fully actualized, even though there have been some changes. According to him, the tenet which have us in a stronghold, deny us our right to be able to control and manage our resources, are still in place, and until those laws are either reviewed or abrogated outright from our statute book, the struggle continues. Owunaru was the second in command to Boro in the Niger-Delta Volunteer Force and claimed that the rebel group had no support except from other Ijaws in Ghana. But before the group went to war with the federal government in 1966, the opening part of the Kayama Declaration, which encouraged and mobilized the youth for action, reads in part, quote, "Today is a great day, not only in your lives, but also in the history of the Niger Delta. Perhaps it will be the greatest day for a very long time. This is not because we are going to bring the heavens down, but because we are going to demonstrate to the world what and how we feel about oppression." The declaration continued, "Remember your 70-year-old grandmother who still farms to eat. Remember also your poverty-stricken people, and then remember too your petroleum, which is being pumped out daily from your veins, and then fight for your freedom." End of quote. Giving his plea before he was condemned to death by the government of Aguiyi-Ironsi, Boro noted, quote, "Most of the youths were so frustrated with the general neglect that they were ready for any action led by an outstanding leader to gain liberty. We were clinched in tyrannical chains and led through a dark alley of perpetual political and social deprivation. We were strangers in our own country. Inevitably, therefore, the day would have to come for us to fight for our long-denied right to self-determination," he said. He continued, "Economic development of the area is certainly the most appalling aspect. There is not even a single industry. The only fishery industry, which ought to be situated in a properly riverine area, is sited about 80 miles inland at Aba. The boatyard at Opobo had its headquarters in Enugu. Personnel in these industries and also in the oil stations are predominantly non-Ijaw." He claimed that his people sought for independence and sovereignty not because of an excessive love of power, but because their conditions were peculiar and the authorities did not understand their problems, and as a result, the treatment they were getting from the government was lacking in mercy. Since his death in 1968, there have been others who, inspired by his action, fought the same cause for the region. Ken Saro-Wiwa, who was executed by the regime of General Sani Abacha, is another notable example. So, click here to watch our story on the execution of Ken Saro-Wiwa in 1995. For more interesting stories like this one, please like this video and subscribe to Hisple Media, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you very much for watching. Peace.